Story time on how I got away from my mom. So basically, I lived in a trap house. And my mom didn't have a car, so I busted to and from school. And because of the toxicity of my home, I came late every day. But this specific day, I decided to come home early. So I'm having a good day. I get home, and the back door is locked. And we didn't use the front door. So I'm like, why is the back door locked? So I call her, and I'm like, can you open the door, weirdo? She's like, oh, I forgot to call you. I'm on the way now. Go to the park. I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, just go, just go. I'm at the park for like 3 hours, and she finally gets there. My phone's damn near dead. And she's like, we're gonna get our house back, baby. I'm like, how did we lose it? Like, how you just gonna pop out with that? And so we're just driving for a long time, and we get to this motel in an area I don't know. And her boyfriend secretly told me, one of them, told me that the house got raided, like for part two. Part two of getting away from my toxic mom. As I said, we lived in a trap house, so there was people renting out the room next to mine, the living room, the garage, even sometimes the laundry room. But the thing was, my mom's delusional ass claimed that she owned the house. In reality, she just used to mess with the owner, and she still had to rent it out, but it wasn't on papers. And she hadn't paid for like a year. And she'd been asked to leave so many times, but she just hid it. So the only way for her to get out was for force. So they had to raid it. Meanwhile, my mom doesn't think I know all this. So she's giving me this BS story about how the house is getting fixed and we're going to get it back. And if I could take a year off of school to help her with the kids. Because apparently in her eyes, I don't need school because I'm dumb anyways. Like for part three. Part three, getting away from my toxic mom. So basically, after her "you're not going to school anymore" conversation, I'm plotting on how I'm gonna get to school. She took my phone, so I couldn't do that. So my plan was to basically wake up the next day, which I am very horrible at, let my dad know what was going on, and see if he can get me to school. I called him from the hotel phone, and he sent an Uber. And yes, I made it to school, but my mom was basically threatening my dad on the side. She was trying to expose me of all this stuff that I've done, basically trying to make him not want to help me. Like, oh, I raised her for 15 years. You don't know her. She's manipulative. She's evil. She's a demon child. She's just gonna use you. My dad didn't give a fuck. Like, he didn't care. She ended up threatening to call the cops, so he did have to bring me home or to the motel that night. And the next day, I had to get to school on 4 buses, no phone, and a bad sense of direction, like for part 4. Part 4 of getting away from my toxic mom. So basically, that night, we were just sitting outside of the motel, and he's like, he sees the situation. He's like, nah, like, I guess he'd never seen it for his own eyes of what I was telling him the entire time, and it just hit him. So he was able to get the phone back, but he didn't give it to me because she threatened to break it. So he had me write down the directions to school from this area, and basically I had to try to thug it out and make it to school through 4 buses. The plan was to wake up at 5. I ended up waking up at 7. Literally walked a completely different direction than I was supposed to. Twice. Made it to school by like 10. I had like 4 panic attacks that entire day. Mental breakdowns. Like, it's not a joke. I was so paranoid that my mom was gonna pull up. And my boyfriend at the time called my dad, and he's like, she needs help. So that night, my dad was like, F it. Like, you're coming to my crib. Like, I don't care. So he hit me at my cousin's house, like for part 5. Part 5 of getting away from my toxic mom. So basically, I had to hide because she knew where he lived. And once she realized I wasn't coming home, she was spamming. But my dad didn't care. He went to go get me clothes anyways. And I went to school the next day on time. Everything was running smoothly. My friends were there for me until this one class period I forgot. Which one specifically? I got a summons to the front office. I text my dad. I'm like, is this you? Like, are you here? He's like, no, don't go. But I had to because they were bugging. So he's like, it's time. Like, go tell the counselor. I'm like, oh, I can't. So I get in there and I have a whole fucking panic attack. And my boyfriend at the time ended up having to tell the whole story because he was one of the only people that knew. And basically, my mom was in the front claiming I had a doctor's appointment that I didn't have. And when she realized that they weren't letting me out, she basically was going off saying, oh, she don't need this school. She's dumb, da 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 da. Like for part 6.
will never, and I mean never, forget the time that we had a male sub in high school and a girl asked to go to the restroom and he said sure. So she grabbed something and he heard a wrapper and he was like, oh, if you're gonna eat candy, you can do it in here, but you have to share with everyone in the class. And she was like, what? And he was like, well, I heard the wrapper. And she whips out a tampon, shoves it in his face, and she goes, you want to share? Oh, girl, savage.
I grew up Catholic in the suburbs of California. That's what this is about. And the first time I was at confession, I was like, I know what I'm gonna say. I was so prepared. I was like, let's do this. I almost killed a baby. So when I was about 4, I did everything my brother did. I loved my brother so much. And when we were children, we went to the doctor to get vaccines, as children do. My brother went in and got his first. He already knew the drill. So when it was my turn to get a shot, he knew it hurt, and he wanted to protect me. So do you know what he did? When the nurse came in to give me my shot, he yelled from the top of his little boy lungs, "Kick the shot lady!" The pregnant shot lady. My poor mother. He had to hold my flailing little legs down as I tried to kick this woman. But the real kicker, my college major? Nursing!
Story time about why I made my boyfriend stop being friends with his girl best friend. So a little background information. I was in my sophomore year of high school, and my boyfriend and I had been dating for about 6 months. And he had been best friends with this girl, we're gonna call her Addie, for about 3 years. Now, I had known Addie way before that, probably since we were in kindergarten. But her and I weren't like BFFs, we were more of acquaintances. But obviously, we became friends because she was always around my boyfriend. A month after him and I started dating, I decided that we had to set boundaries for their friendship. Because they had first period together, right? Well, every morning at 9:45, I would go on Snapchat and I would see a picture of them. And it would be her kissing him on the cheek. Not only would it be on her story, but it would also be on his. And I had her on Snapchat before that. She had never done that, ever. So he said that he had talked to Addie about it, right? And things were good for the next 2 months. Then they were forced to work together on a project. Like for part 2. Part 2 about why I made my boyfriend stop being friends with his girl best friend. So like I said, they had been forced to work together on a school project. At least that's what he told me. So I brushed it off because I was not about to seem like the jealous girlfriend. Well, the next day, him and I were supposed to go out to the movies. So I texted him right before we were about to leave, and I said, hey, are you on your way to get me? He goes, OMG, no, I'm sorry, I forgot. I have to work with Addie on this project. She's about to come over my house. So at this point, I'm like really pissed off. So I text him and I say, I thought you guys had a whole week to work on this project. Why does it have to be tonight? Addie knew that him and I were supposed to go to the movies that night also. He said, we just want to get it done really quickly so that way I can spend the rest of the week with you. And she's snapping me the whole time that she's at his house. Off of his phone. So at around 1:30 a.m., I get a Snapchat from her on his account, and she's laying on his chest. Like for part 3. Part 3 about why I made my boyfriend stop being friends with his girl best friend. So like I said, she snaps me at 1:30 in the morning, a picture of her laying on his chest, and it's captioned, hey girlie, I hope you don't mind, but I have to spend the night at his house. He lost track of time working on our project, and it's way too late for him to take me home. So at this point, I'm furious, and I don't snap her back. So the next morning, I call my boyfriend, and I asked him, hey, is Addie still there? So he says yeah, and then I ask him to put me on speakerphone. So when he does, I say hi to Addie. She goes, OMG, hey girl, how are you? And that's when I pretty much go off on this bitch. I tell him that while he was asleep, she was sending me pictures of her laying on top of him, off of his Snapchat, and that she was sending those type of pictures to multiple people on his Snapchat. Because my best friend had texted me that morning, saying that she thought that we broke up because Addie was sending her pictures of her laying on top of him. So I tell him, pick, me or her. And she starts crying. After a minute of silence, he hangs up the phone and then blocks me. Good luck to the next girl. Story time about how I almost got kidnapped by my online boyfriend. So a little background information, I was 16 and in 11th grade. So a year before this all happened, I posted a picture on Instagram saying, add me on Snapchat if you want to be friends. Yes, I was that person. Anyway, so this really cute guy adds me on Snapchat. And after about 3 months talking, he said that he wants to meet me in person. And he didn't sound sus at all, so I was like, sure. So we met at this park that was like 30 minutes away. We met there around 6 o'clock, so when the sun was setting. And he was super nice. It was super romantic. Well, then we went to his house. We watched a movie and we did the nasty. So after that, he asked me if I want a drink, and what I could have swore was 20 minutes later, I wake up in an abandoned farm shed with no clothes or anything. So I start screaming my head off. I don't have my phone or anything, so I start to run. And then he grabs me. He says, if you try to run or you try to scream, I am going to kill you. Like for Part 2 about how I almost got kidnapped by my online boyfriend. So like I said, I wake up in this abandoned farm shed. I don't have no clothes. I don't have a phone. So I try to run and he grabs me. He says that if you run, I will kill you. So I was like, okay, fine. What do you want from me? So he starts putting on lingerie and tells me to also put some on so we can take pictures together. What the actual you know what? So after that, he starts crying and he starts telling me his whole life story and how he's not who I think he is. Turns out that he's 32 and he just goes online pretending that he's 17 years old. So I just try to comfort him, right? It ends up working. He brings me my clothes, tells me to run, or else he's going to once again kill me. So I run, I go to this gas station, get picked up by the police, find my parents. Luckily for me, I paid attention to where everything was. He was arrested, he's still in prison to this day, and I got grounded for 3 months.